remember the second assignment we was talking about, or we was talking about next year. I want to ask you this question personally, just like towards you, directly towards you. And like, what had transformed you to be the person you are? And are you? Yeah, what had transformed you to be the person you are?
What transformed me to be the person that I am? I suppose the crudest, shortest answer would be addiction.
How so?
That's a great question. How so? I think I was about maybe 18 or 19. Maybe a little younger, that I had gone to my cousin's house. There was a gathering, and there was a strange fellow that was there. We had never seen him before in the Persian community. He had just moved from the Bay Area. His name was Hussein. Not a very likable fellow, very aggressive, bushy mustache. He had a very modest wife. They were both artists. He wrote, he was an author, and she was an artist. She eventually went to Davis, got her PhD, and teaches art history. He passed away a couple years ago due to cancer. Like, everybody who's young, 18, 19, 20, trying to figure out where they belong and what they ought to do with their pathetic little life, He said, I have gatherings at my house if you guys want to come. Sure. And didn't like the conversations, but my father enjoyed, what was being talked about, so we continued going there. And I think one morning while I was washing this Honda, it was a white Honda at the car wash about 10:30 in the morning, Philly, could you? Yes, thank you. Thank you. I just had a feeling that he was right about everything that he was talking about. And so I called him and I said I would like to come by and just chat. He said, okay. And that continued for the next maybe 10, 12 years. It was me, my mom's cousin Hussein, and one of my best friends, Mehrdad. They were all sort of confused. And so he enjoyed philosophy and religion very much. And then when you kind of hang out with anyone with any special interest, whether someone likes to smoke weed every night or watches pornography every night or likes to read books every night, that's what you gravitate for, especially if the person you're working with happens to have a very aggressive temperament. He had a very aggressive, very bossy temperament. He would tell you what you could or couldn't do, And when you hang out with someone like that for about 10, 12 years, and then he became a family friend for the next 25 years, you begin to adopt some of his behavior. So if you're asking why sometimes in the class when I speak I'm a bit aggressive or blunt or crude or just mean, it is because of, some of the stuff that I have inherited from him. And in some ways, I think it's nice when you get caught by someone who you think can offer you some nice things at a very young age. I think what benefited me was I was single, I had no attachments to anything or anyone. I was not married. Hussein was married, the other Hussein. Mehrdad was married. I had nothing. So I could just pursue this stuff, day in and day out. And I knew I would never get a job. So, having this job is kind of a lucky thing. Hello. So here I am. Like this classroom? Yeah, I think so. It's about 80% or 70%, 50% good, 60%, maybe 70%. But what experience has revealed to me is that should any of you in this class, for example, want to pursue a degree in philosophy, religious studies, or humanities, when I first began, I assumed that I just go to any school and they'll do. But the truth is, as you age, you want to walk into an environment. It's kind of like dating, really. You know, it's one thing to go with someone who's a complete mess at the age of 20. You have the stamina, you have the hope, you lack the experience, so you go in there, fully committed, and your companion just pushes you around. They begin really to harass you because of a damaged past, whatever that may be. As you get a little older and a little worn out, you say to yourself, I'm tired of going out with people who are a complete mess. I want someone who's a bit more functional. Laney is a good place for young instructors who have a lot of hope, a lot of stamina. But once you get a little older and you realize the complexities of your students or life in Oakland, then you say, okay, maybe it's not worth it. Not because the students are bad. Their life is just far too busy. It's like someone who's addicted to porn. I'm sure they would want intimacy. The tragedy is they just can't have it because of their addiction. It's just too difficult. Not impossible, just difficult to overcome. Yeah. I'd like to come to class and see students a little bit more engaged. Not that you guys aren't. Not on their cell phone, I'd like the rooms to be a little clean, air conditioned maybe once in a while. Yeah, so. Anyone else before we?
I was curious about the relevance of the number 12 in the Bible before, where it came from.
There are many theories. The most interesting is astrology, the 12 houses, and how the sun enters every room or every house at the 33rd degree. And every zodiac sign has a symbol to it, has its own unique personality. I don't know how interesting that is for me anymore, but there you have it. Yeah. Diana? Myla?
I guess I've been thinking a lot about just physical life, everyday capacity, and anger.
When you talk about anger and frustration in physical life, there is this tendency of, especially these days, with all these self-help books and self-help gurus who come on TV and tell you that you should not be angry, you should be mindful, breathe in, breathe out, always live in the present. I think if Karl Marx was alive today, his blood would be boiling more now than in the 18th, 19th century. The truth is, life is frustrating and you ought to be angry. There are lots of injustices. First of all, no one asks you to be born, and here you are. Human beings, it takes us a long, long time to figure things out. And by the time we get to the answer, you've made a whole host of mistakes. And mistakes have consequences, from small to huge. And all of us have to pay for it. And that's something we'll talk about tonight in Hinduism. So you have every right to be angry. The politics of life is difficult. Relationships are difficult. Being in the classroom is difficult. Figuring out what the hell you want to do for the next few years of your life is difficult. Knowing what to do with your parents is difficult. Almost everything you touch, even getting a job, having 2 jobs, and at the end of the month you realize you don't really have any money left. So you have every right to be angry. Anger is not the issue. The issue is, do you have a support system? Do you have a proper, healthy venting mechanism where you can express your anger? You know, one of the nice things about third world countries is that when the politics of life becomes just a bit too much, everybody just jumps into the streets and now you have a mass movement. That's how you get your anger out. You know, or go to Home Depot. One of the nice things that you'll see is there are lots of people standing, you know, waiting for someone to ask them to, I don't know, get a job, you know, 20, 30 bucks an hour. And you realize around like 11:30 to about 1, the wives of these people come in with their car and they open the trunk and they have food for everyone. And then these are people who don't have very much, but they express their poverty in such a dignified and respectful way that I'm not here just to bring food for my husband, but everyone who's around my husband. I think the problem now is that you have to deal with every aspect of your life on your own. You know, especially because we have such a fragmented relationship with our parents. And then you kind of are tossed out on your own at a very young age to kind of just fend for yourself. And life is just difficult to live just all by yourself, you know. And if you don't have a support system, I think, you know, the entertainment culture, the weed culture, the alcohol culture, I mean, these are the only options you have. There are no other options. And your question, I don't think it really is about anger. It's about how one makes the proper changes to kind of deal with anger differently, to deal with perhaps loneliness differently. And it's all about the software. You need to have the proper software. And I don't know if you know anything about computer programming. My brother does. And you have to inject a whole host of, you know, if and thens and buts and this and that. So many conditionals. You know, just in case Diana isn't there, I can talk Jack. If Jack isn't there, then I will call Bob. And it needs to be a very tight web. And the truth is, this culture doesn't have it. You know. And I don't like theories very much. I mean, I could tell you, you know, what Marx would say, what Durkheim would say, what Emil would say, but these are just abstract theories out there. Practical stuff, very, 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 very difficult. You know, it's like, again, dealing with any alcoholic. You have someone who wants to quit, and then someone who's in the process of quitting. Someone who's in the process of quitting has gone through a good amount of realization. There's a good amount of anger about them, but they no longer express it outwardly or mean-spiritedly. You know. My recommendation would be, look for someone. If you're an alcoholic, for example, and you want to change your life, talk to someone who's been an alcoholic for about 20 years and then went through rehab and then overcame. Because they understand everything, both theoretically as well as practically. That's the person you need to talk to. One of the things I always tell my students who enjoy doing philosophy and humanities is that find people in the classroom, become friends with them. Have lunch with them, dinner with them, go out for coffee, just have gatherings on your own, because you need a support system. In the absence of that, you're just all alone and it's difficult. Anyone else? Yeah.
This is related to what I was saying. I was talking with a good friend the other day, and we were talking actually about addiction. And I was like, I said I used to be very obsessive, and that I found that as I get more connected to the people around me and start understanding life through the lens of my community and how I can care for them as well as myself, and not just through like my own needs, I've gone like substantially happier. I told her that if she wants to stop being addicted to the many things that she's into, that she should first find that, like, and I was also reading that, like, the opposite of addiction for me is to be connected to people. And I found people who, do you think that that theoretical, because it's theoretical, we don't know what the opposite of addiction is, but what do you think the opposite of addiction is?
So let me just put it in this particular narrative. Forgive me for those of you who are tired of my ridiculous analogies, but here it is. Imagine I'm a 17-year-old kid, 17-year-old young adult. I'm being facetious. And, what do 17-year-olds do? They just want to have fun. So I turn on my laptop and I watch some wonderful images. The art of nudity, pornography. Okay? Now, at the age of 17 or 18, I am guided by intense pleasure. That's what I want. I'm no longer 17 or 18, now I'm 25 or 27, let's just say. And at this stage, I want intimacy. And I want my relationship to be meaningful. Okay? It doesn't mean that for the past 10 years I've never imagined intimacy. I have, but it wasn't very serious. It was just a passing thing. At the age of 30 now, everything is very different. I'm done with school, I have a job, I come home, and the first thing I do is turn on my laptop. But I look around, I'm all alone. It's no longer abstract, it's no longer a passing thing. I want a companion. I want someone with whom I can have dinner, I can have conversation, I can watch a movie. Now, every time I go on a dating app and I take someone out and I realize while I'm just sitting and having a chat with her, I imagine her being completely naked. And I don't want to do that. I want to treat her like a human being. I'm at an age where I want to respect the person sitting across the table from me. But my addiction makes it enormously difficult, if not completely impossible. I grow very tired of the person I have become. And I hate the very fact that when I was 12, I turned on my laptop, or my father did this or that. I had a student some years ago. He was, I think, 3 or 4. I haven't seen him for many years now. But he said that when he was 3, his father forced him to have sex with a prostitute. And then when he said no, he slapped him and kicked him and beat him up really bad. And that continued for the next few years. And when I met him in my class at the age of 17 or 18, he was so angry. I mean, his presence, physical presence in the class, would kind of make you feel uncomfortable, okay? So remember, from a passing thing now has become very, very serious. I really want to change. I just don't know how or what. I read books, they give me some insights, but they're not strong enough to inspire me to be in a committed relationship with transformation. I go to workshops. The problem with workshops is that they demand now, the person who's guiding this workshop, overcoming your addiction to pornography, he says, okay, you need to get rid of your laptops. Well, that's difficult. Then you need to get rid of, the friends you got. Well, that's difficult. And then you need to kind of occupy your time at all times so you're not, all of a sudden your mind doesn't wander back to pornography. All those things are very, very difficult. You need to be profoundly committed. And the truth is, like the prodigal son, I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make promises. I'm going to break those promises. And then I realized at the age of 40, 45, I'm really, really sick and tired of trying to change, but no change comes about. I don't know what I do then. I don't know. Most of the issues that young people have today, they weren't there for many thousands of years. So these are really relatively new. Addiction to cell phone, addiction to pornography, addiction to weed. These are just brand new stuff. And I don't know how the changes will come about. Yeah. Anyone else before we move into something else? Okay. I'd like to finish Gilgamesh, but I'm not going to. Maybe I'll just share with you a scene from the epic, and then we'll move into Hinduism, which is a much more ridiculous tradition than the epic tradition. When you love someone the way Gilgamesh loves Enkidu, you become codependent. They become your crutch. Every time you want to go somewhere, you say, hey, Enkidu, come to Safeway with me. Hey, Enkidu, I'm going for a walk. Come on a walk with me. Enkidu, I'm watching a movie. Come sit next to me and watch a movie with me. I'm having some food. Sit next to me and watch, or have some food with me. And you realize that Gilgamesh can't move an inch away without the presence of Enkidu. Now remember why Gilgamesh hangs out with Enkidu all the time. Because Enkidu has not lost some of the divine qualities or attributes that he was given. He still practices them, he still observes them, and Gilgamesh can see them. If that's a little too difficult to grasp, think of it this way. I'm sure many of you in this class have heard of Malcolm X and some of the qualities that he had. All he has to do to kind of make us feel ashamed about ourselves and our lives is for him to just walk into the classroom and just stand. He doesn't need to talk. He doesn't need to do anything. There is something about Malcolm X that we know. There is something about Malcolm X that we see that automatically shames us, that we are not living our potential, we are not living our best life, we are far too selfish, we are not very community-oriented, we don't much care about justice, we don't much care about the politics of injustice, to go out there and be a bit more active, okay? So, and it's an important thing for you to understand, because should any of you in this class evolve to a stage where you actually want to kind of figure out who and what you are, not who and what you are through your physical body, or your emotional body, or your intellectual body, or the traumas of the past, which you call the psychological body, but you have found all these 4 different areas of who and what you are, the physical, the emotional, the psychological, and the intellectual, to be completely irrelevant. Once you have nothing more to hang on to, now there is this whisper of the spiritual quest slowly coming forth. The moment you find yourself an Enkidu, i.e. a teacher, i.e. someone you can look at and have all these emotions, let's just call them spiritual emotions, if you will, or emotional feelings, okay? Then what's going to happen is you want to be around them all the time. What we talked about on Wednesday about Eros, that you want to occupy every inch of their physical space. Now, what happens in the story is that eventually, if the gods like you, eventually if it's your fate, if it's your destiny, you have to walk your path alone. No one can accompany you. And this can happen in 2 ways. The first way it happened for Gilgamesh was the following. Enkidu physically dies. He gets sick, he dies. And it's a shock to Gilgamesh's system. I have been hanging out with this guy for the past 25 years, 24/7. Now he's there no more. What the hell do I do? Now, the funny thing about Enkidu is the following. You can't go back to Uruk. You can't go back to Oakland and find another Enkidu. It doesn't work that way. Enkidu are like these rare human beings or fruits that life just throws out once every generation. And Gilgamesh knows that if he was to go back to his country, he's not going to find anyone like Enkidu. And he longs to be in the presence of Enkidu, or Enkidu-like. But he knows that city does not make people like Enkidu. You can't live in Oakland, be comfortable, see the people you see, and turn out to be like Malcolm X. It doesn't work that way. You have to see a horror show. Then you have to end up in prison. Then you have to somehow recover. Then you have to find an Elijah Muhammad. Then you have to get rid of the power that he has given you. Walk away completely. Who do you find like that in Oakland? No one. Okay? Now, when Enkidu dies, there is this great brokenness inside Gilgamesh. Where does he go? Well, he can't go back to Uruk, so he goes to a place unknown. He says, you know what? I've heard that there is this guy whose name is Utanapishtim, someone who's been given wisdom. Not wisdom of how to make money, not wisdom of how I can go back and fix my trauma, not wisdom of how do I make sense of the Gospel of John. If there is a soul, if I have a soul, I want the wisdom or a toolbox with which I can bring my soul up and see it. Okay? Now, the thing I wanted to talk about in this particular scene in the epic is the concept of the notion or the reality of death. So let me just say a couple of things and move on. There are lots of people around us who die. But if I was to be very, very honest, I don't care. And I don't care because I don't know them. I can't care for things I don't know. I can probably show some sympathy, maybe a little bit of empathy, but once I walk away, I will forget the entire thing. With death comes grief. My mom is about 80, my father is about 90. If I go home today and on my cell phone there is a message that mom or dad died or both of them died, I've known my father for about 60 years. I've known my mom for about 60 years. And I have a very good relationship with them. There is 60 years of history. And if I was to be a bit more honest, let me just take myself back to my perhaps 30s or 40s. Right now, if the news comes that they're dead, I'll probably be sad for a day or so, but that's it. Now, let's just say my father, who's older, and men usually die sooner than their wives. Let's say the news is dad has died. I'm going to cancel class for the next couple of months, go to Roseville. The first thing I will think about is my father is here no more. And I won't feel the full force until I get to Roseville and seeing my mom cry, wailing, screaming. She got married to this man at the age of 15. So I'm going to look at my mom and she's going to be screaming and automatically I'm going to cry. That's just the way things happen. Grief. It's always about loss. Now, what this loss or grief does is that it pushes me outward. I look at my mom, I feel sad. I look at the place where my dad sits all the time, he's there no more, I feel sad. I go back in time and revisit all the stories that him and I shared, working at the car wash for about 20 years or so. I'll be a bit more sad. Then the politics of life will come in. My mom is 80. What are we going to do with her? Grief has now a different shade to it. It's a bit more political now. My life is busy. I'm a little older, a little sicker, a little more tired. The idea of taking care of my mom or having her move in with me is going to be a little trying or difficult. Then after some time, when the night quiets down, something else will happen. We said, Dad died. Mom isn't really that young either. She'll probably die soon as well. And then I begin to internalize my own death. I too will die. And the problem with this particular internalization is that I have no answers. I don't know how to wrestle with this particular question, that I too will die. Because the moment you ask this question, you say to yourself, okay, if you too are going to die, how should you live the rest of your life? What sort of things should you do when you walk in the classroom? How do you want to teach? What do you want to say? You have really nothing to say to your wife or to your kids. The prospect of death is going to push you into this place of isolation and absolute loneliness. My friends call to say, oh, Amir, I'm sorry for your loss. I don't care for what they have to say to me. Hello, hello. Okay? Remember, in loneliness, no one can reach you. No one can console you. You're all alone. Okay? So once Gilgamesh knows that he too will die, and once he knows that there is no one like Enkidu in his hometown, he has no choice but to go on this quest. Now, death can happen metaphorically, psychologically, or physically. In the psychological sense, all of you in this class have your own lives. You have ambitions, you have pursuits. There comes a point, hopefully not, but should it happen, you go back in time and you want to do things, you want to enjoy the narratives or experiences you've memorized and memorialized, only to realize that you don't really care for all the stories you've created. You don't care for your friends, you don't care for your life, you don't care for your ambitions or dreams. That's a psychological death, in the sense that your past no longer is relevant to you. You're looking for something else, but what you're looking for, you don't really know. And that is what Gilgamesh is going through. Are you going to be depressed? Yes. Is it natural? Yes. Do you need drugs? No. In loss, are you going to be grieving? Are you going to be angry? The answer is yes. Is it natural? Yes. Do you need to be drugged up? No. In death, you're always going to be confronted with big questions. Do you have answers to them? No. Are you going to be confused? Yes. Will you even be suicidal? At least a thought of it? Definitely. Is it normal? Yeah. Good. Any questions before we do Hinduism? No one? Yeah.
What about the fear of leaving things undone?
Can I give you a very personal response to the question? Forgive me if I keep using myself. I don't have any other reference point that I can trust. So when I was walking the stairs to get to my office about 5 in the morning for the past maybe 5 months or so, I had this burning sensation right in the middle of my chest. And I said, oh, well, you know, I'm healthy, I exercise every day. No, it's okay. It's all right. Was that Persian music? So eventually I said, you know, this doesn't make any sense. I've never had this strange feeling, so let me just go check it out. And so I come to find that I'm very close to having a heart attack, stroke, and dying and all that. And so we make an appointment to do angio. They go into your heart, to look at their arteries, to see how good they are, how bad they are, do stents. And the guy says to me, you're in a bad shape. We can't do any, minor work. You need to have open heart surgery. So, you have parents, I have siblings, I have a wife, I have kids. I say, okay, just in case anything happens, I just need to put things in order. Now it's a very healing process, creating a will, because you're forced to examine your life. You know that you're not going to be around. There's a good possibility that, yes, your wife may date eventually, and you got to be okay with that. You're never going to see your kids graduate, this and that. You're going to be okay with that. All the work you put in the house, this, that, your friends, the things you just have to leave behind, especially you're going to be here no more. And the process of creating this will, what you realize, you're beginning to understand a good amount of things about yourself, about your life, what's meaningful, what's meaningless, what's relevant, what's irrelevant. And then you bring your wife in and say, okay, honey, listen, this is the last letter. Just in case I don't come out, only then will you read this, okay? I'm sure she's very nosy, so she's gone. And she's read everything. I think you have to be at a place, and sometimes you don't know if you're going to get there, but sometimes as you're doing the work itself, you kind of come to accept your failures. It happens automatically. If that doesn't happen, I think you really have to be at a certain place in life. I think when any relationship goes bad or it's about to end, you need to have closure. And if it's your time to break your relationship with life, you need to have closure. I don't know how it happens. Sometimes when you break up with someone, there is no closure for about 2 years, sometimes for 6 months, sometimes for 2 weeks. Different people work with this stuff differently. But the best remedy, and we'll talk about that tonight, is self-knowledge. The more you know yourself, the more you know your physical body, all the places you've taken this thing, okay? And whenever you take your body anywhere, there are forces out there. It'll create emotions. And it's only in time where you realize, well, if I didn't take my body to that friend's house, I wouldn't have been smoking, or maybe whatever, and then I wouldn't feel bad going home and then puking all night. Okay. And then you're going to have, it's also good to know your emotional body, in the sense that, we all have emotions inside us, and we all have stories and narratives and memories of these emotions. And sometimes you say to yourself, was I really that stupid? I spent like 20 years of my life thinking about that particular emotion created by that particular person. Okay. So the more you know how these emotions come about, and the more you know what exactly it is that you want, you're going to create less emotions inside your body that you don't like. And then there is the intellectual body. We are kind of intellectual prostitutes. One day you read the Bible, one day you read the works of the devil, one day you hang out with the communists, one day you hang out with, Christians or Buddhists or whatever, and then you're like a buffet of all these mishmash of ideas, and nothing works well. All you know is that, you just like sleeping with Karl Marx, and you like to sleep with Dostoevsky, then you like to sleep with this. And at the end of the day, when someone asks, so what kind of ideas do you actually enjoy? You say, well, I like all of them, but the truth is you just have diarrhea, okay? And so it's good to kind of figure out what exactly it is that you enjoy and just be focused on that. So the more self-knowledge you have, and remember when we talk about self, I'm not talking about the kingdom of God within. That's at the last stage for very, very, very advanced people. Know your past, know your present, know your physical body, know the sort of things you think about, how addictions come about, those things. The more you know, the more comfortable you can be in your own skin. Yeah. Anyone else? No one? Both? Sure? Okay. Hindus. Now, for those of you who may be interested in these traditions, and maybe tomorrow or next year or a decade from now, you visit a book or a workshop on Hinduism, I'm just giving you the version that I like. So just in case you read a book and realize that I was wrong about the whole thing, or I didn't give you the proper information, it's probably true. It's my own version. You know, you just become creative with ideas. So if it doesn't work for you, I guess it's too bad. And I'll present the ideas in both theory as well as in a way that has some practical application. So it's not just armchair academic, ridiculous ideas. Some years ago, about 5, 10, 15, 20,000 years ago, there is a group of people with tents by the Indus River Valley. We call it the Indus River Valley Civilization. Group of people. Every morning they go out there and they fish. Or they do something to get some food. Time passes and there is no longer any fish. People need to eat. There is no food to eat. For those of you who wonder why immigrants come to the US, sometimes there is no food. Sometimes there is no intellectual food. Sometimes parents don't see any hope for their kids in their country, so they migrate. Yeah. Because we are future-oriented people, in other words, you're here for one reason, because you imagine a Jaylon 5 years from now with a master's degree. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Sometimes you live in a country where that doesn't exist for you. You wake up in the morning, you say, there is no school. Even if I want to go to school, I have no money to pay for school. Even if I want to get married, I don't have any money to pay for the wedding. So this intellectual, imaginative food that you need to survive and to make plans for your future doesn't exist. So you know what you do? Your mom is sleeping, your dad's sleeping, you kiss them on the forehead, and very quietly you just pack your stuff and you leave. And you swim across the ocean and you get to the US. Why? And hope. Maybe you have a hero in your life and you're inspired to kind of figure out how they became your hero. That's a hope. So you go to the bookstore and you buy a book about their life. But if you don't even have that, you're completely hopeless. You don't have any nourishment. Your belly must be full, but intellectually you're just depressed. So now that people have no food, and remember, that's the first pillar of life. If your belly is screaming for food, you're not going to think about God. You just want food. Okay. Now, as the land is drying up and people are starving and dying, this group divides into two. And whenever there is a division in any group, what you have are two alpha characters, two alpha males. One says, let's go to the east. The other says, let's go to the north. Okay. Those who go to the east end up in a place called India. Those who go to the south, they end up in a place called Persia. Now, some of you may not think very much of geography, but think of it this way. If you love dates, the stuff that you eat, okay? You can order a palm date tree from somewhere on Amazon. They can bring it to your house and you can plant it in the backyard, but you're never going to have dates. Why? Because you need a temperature of 150 degrees. In India, food grows out of the earth every single day, truckload. In Persia, all you have is sand. When your belly is full and you have no worries for food, you sit, you read. You sit, you think thoughts. If your belly is screaming for food because everywhere you look is sand and there is nothing to be had, all you think about is food. So in India, you have a religion that's abstract, what we call metaphysical. Your soul. In India, you have a religion of Jesus Christ. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, offer them the left. In Persia, what you have is a religion or a philosophy of life that's about justice. In India, you have 10 people, but you have 50,000 loaves of bread. No one's going to fight for food. People can be as greedy as they wish, as lustful as they wish, and all they will suffer from is diarrhea. Because they just eat. In Persia, that's not the case. You have 10 people, you have one single slice of bread. You need a philosophy that says everybody's equal and everybody needs to have a share. And just in case someone crosses a line, they need to be punished. An eye for an eye. You need to know that about yourself. If you can't pay rent, you have the right to be angry, not to be passive. If your kids are in harm's way, you need to be angry. You need to fight for their rights. You can't be a stoic. You need to be a Moses. So remember, a good amount of who and what we are depends on where we have been born. So when you look at the tradition of Persia, you have Zoroastrianism, and then you have Islam. And what you have in these traditions is justice. If someone takes your rights away, you pick up your sword or your gun and fight. Now, again, keep in mind, when your belly is full, you're privileged. You can sit and think lofty thoughts. When you are in a poor environment, inwardly and outwardly, you're not passive, you're extremely active. Indians are passive. Now, what the Hindus argued about human life is the following. All of life initially begins with kama, K-A-M-A. It means pleasure. Now, this can be looked at as something organic or something that eventually will become a habit. Let me give an example. Kama is about pleasure, it's about having fun, where your body is entertained all the time. There is a stage where you simply want to have sex and there is nothing wrong with it, as long as you're careful and all that. Okay? It's okay to have sex from the age 2, maybe 5, let's just say 16, all the way to about 30, maybe 25. But for that to continue in a very callous way and becomes an addiction, it's going to become an obstacle when your desire for intimacy comes about. So there is nothing wrong with pleasure as long as you get to a stage where you graduate from pleasures of the body, kama. Okay? Once you're done with kama, you get to a place called artha. Artha is about the abdomen. It's about going to school, taking yourself a bit more seriously. That you have a brain, that you have brain cells, and their task is to think, to reflect. So next time when you want to have sex, make sure that you sleep over. So in the morning you guys can have breakfast and engage in a nice conversation. It is true from the age 16 to about 25, you would have sex. And when the person is asleep, you pack up your stuff and run very, very quickly without their awareness. Okay, there is a stage for that. But once you graduate, and hopefully when you graduate, you say, you know what? I don't want to walk away anymore. I want to stay in this house. In the morning, I want to make some omelets, some coffee, and we're going to sit and watch a great movie and go for a walk. Okay. Or you drop out of high school because you got like friends and you guys want to go hiking or smoking or whatever. And now you're 25. All of a sudden, this volcano erupts inside and he says, you know what? I'm getting a little older, uglier, smellier. Maybe I should just go back to school. That's artha, power. You just don't think about the immediate pleasure. You make plans for your future. I want to go to school now. I want to make some money. I want to save some money. I want to buy a house. Hopefully this stage will be over as well. You will graduate properly and you'll get to a place called Dharma. D-H, I think, A-R-M-A, Dharma. Dharma is about your emotional relationship to your community. You get a wife, you get a husband, you have kids, you're good to your parents, you take care of them in their old age when they're sick and almost dying. Okay? So this is the organic way of life's evolution. From 0 to about 12, 13, 14, you just have fun. Your parents take you to the park. You go on the swings. You just have fun for 5, 6, 9, 10 hours. And when they bring you home, you break all the plates. That's your right. At the age of 13 or 14, your parents force you to be a bit more responsible, i.e., you become an adult. Almost all the cultures on this planet, with the exception of the US, these days, they have rites of passage. Your grandma calls you into the kitchen and says, can you break a couple of eggs for me? And in a subtle way, what she's saying to you, you're no longer a kid, you're my helper now. Your father says to you, let's change the oil together of the car. And what he's saying is, you're no longer a kid. That's your rite of passage. Now, what all these three have in common is P as in pleasure. If someone asks you what does it mean to be a human being, the answer is very, very, very simple. An animal who seeks pleasure at all times. But as you grow, as you evolve, as you mature, your definition of pleasure begins to change. Remember, pleasure is in sex. Then pleasure changes to sex and meaning. Then sex, meaning, and commitment. Then sex, meaning, commitment, and marriage. Then sex, meaning, commitment, marriage, and children. And as you add more stuff to sex, you realize you don't have as much sex anymore. You just pursue all these other meanings of pleasure. Okay? Now, if someone was to ask you, what is pleasure? The answer would be the following. Pleasure is something that you and I pursue. Why do we pursue them? Because we are attracted to them. Attraction turns into desire. Desire turns into want. Turns into need. And for any need to be satisfied, you need resources. You need a car, you need money. To get money, you need a job. Once your need is satisfied, you're bored in the sense that you no longer have the need. Now you jump on a different branch, pursuing another pleasure. Okay. The pleasure in the realm of kama is about 15 minutes. Watch a good movie. I'm going to go home again, watch all the Rambo movies tonight. They'll give me pleasure for about 6 hours. And once done, I'm going to be exhausted. I'm going to reflect and I say to myself, Amir, how could you be so stupid? Spend 6 hours of your life watching Sylvester Stallone. So this kind of pleasure eventually will lead to regret. But 6 hours where you don't reflect, you don't think, you don't ask big questions. You just veg out. In the realm of artha, you go through the same exact thing. But what you desire now changes a little bit. You want a BA, or you want an MA, or you want a PhD. If here, you had to work maybe 10 hours to get to your pleasure, here you have to work for about 10 years. Here you will learn how to compromise. Here you will learn how to wrestle with the difficulties of life. Here you will do things you won't even like. Many of you in this class, you don't like to be here. You want to be home, air condition on, a nice sandwich and a good movie. But this is the sacrifice you make. Why? Because you're in the place of artha. Now that doesn't mean that you're not going to come down here when you go home. Some of you, you will go home and you will smoke. You will go home and you will watch porn. But your salvation is the following. You're no longer in the realm of kama. It's not about just pleasure. It's pleasure with the responsibility of wanting to go to school. So you come down here just to relax for a bit. Okay? Now, the stage of Dharma is very much the same as these two stages. The only big difference is the following. You're going to get married, and the only way you will divorce your wife or your husband is when you die, or when they die. That's about a 50-year process. In the marriage, you will have children. They will entertain and occupy and torment you until your last breath. You have parents, and you feel responsible for them, and you will take care of them. And what you realize is the following. This world of karma occupies about 12 years of your life. The world of education will occupy another 10, 15 years of your life. And now you're 30, 35. And now you get a job. Then you get to a place of marriage. You're married from the age 30 all the way to about 60 or 70 or 80. And then you die. Now, what all these have in common is the following. Another branch of commonality. It doesn't matter whether you're in Kama or Artha or Dharma. The moment your needs have been satisfied, boredom will set in. I want to touch something that'll just last. I don't want it to disappear. I want to fall in love, and I always want to be in love. I want to go home and watch a movie that doesn't end and will be exciting for the next 20 years. I want to have a job that will always be refreshing, inspiring. I want to have conversations that are always meaningful and have depth. But the truth is, it's never going to be that way. It doesn't matter what you pursue. You will always be betrayed by your imagination, always. Many of us in this class have been in love, and we were inspired by love. In the end, it became irrelevant. We didn't care. We were inspired to go to a party, and we went to the party, and we had a great time. There came a point where you realized, I'm a little tired, I'm a little sick, I want to go home now. And what I'm trying to say to you is the following. You don't need to call 1-900-psychic to get to know your future. Your future is being told to you by a Hindu tradition. Whatever path you take in life, boredom, frustration, disappointment, sorrow await you, and there is no escape from it. Take it very, very seriously. In the sense that what exactly is it that all of us in this class want to do? We want to be happy. It is true, buying a Tesla will make you happy for 10 days. And then you're going to say, did I really spend $50,000 on a car? You're lonely. It's sad, I know. You want a companion. Eventually that companion will suffocate you, and you want to be alone. Yeah.
Where Father is trying to impart knowledge on the Son, and older son that is loyal to dad, but then doesn't actually gain experience. And it kind of seems like that, and sort of like, I don't know, like right now we're, I guess in lost my train of thought a little bit, but just kind of, like when you're talking to them over there about like, I don't, like you're younger, it's like you have to go through these experiences to gain knowledge, right? And in a sense, you're a teacher, you're imparting this wisdom in a sense, but it's also like, as people, we have to go through these stages in order to become realized.
The difference between having a teacher and going through difficulties versus just doing things on your own is the following. Teachers are always a shortcut. That's the only thing that they will offer you, is a shortcut. Is it true that do you like my classes? And you're 48, you said? You look great, by the way. I don't need to be a genius to know that, well, at the age of 48 and being at school at Laney with all these people is not the best of feelings. Sure, you're learning something. Sure, there's some excitement, inspiration, all that stuff. But you wouldn't mind if your life had taken a different path. Okay. So you go through all the stuff. So at the age of 50, you say, I've gained all these experiences, my life is here, I want it to be changed. Imagine if you had taken, say, a class at the age of 20, just before you decide to drop out of school and go into the profession that you're in. And that particular instructor was a shortcut in the sense that he or she inspired you to the extent that instead of walking away from school, you stayed in school. And you got your degrees in school. And let's just say you became a sociologist and you want to teach. Or maybe you just want to be a political activist. You would be done with school at the age of 25. And it'd be a hands-on academic program. There was a book, you may actually be interested in the book. It's called Gang Leader for a Day. It's about an Indian guy who was doing his PhD dissertation or this long essay in, I think, sociology in Chicago. And he went to his committee and said, listen, I want to do my research on the projects. And his advisor said to him, are you crazy? Well, go read books on the projects. He says, no, I don't want to do it like that. I actually want to go inside. Says, they'll kill you. You're Indian. They're not going to do that. He says, it doesn't matter. That's what I want to do. I want to be hands-on. I want to be on the ground. I want to see what lives inside this organism. And so eventually they agreed. And so what this Indian kid did, it was about 27, 28. He asked the runners. The runners are those who kind of take the drug and take it to a nice, rich neighborhood and sell them. Who's running the show? And they would say, are you a cop, CIA, FBI? Who the hell are you? Get lost in that. Eventually, he gained their trust. And little by little, he came to know the people on the higher levels. And after some years, he got to the person who was running the entire show. And that leader told this Indian kid that if you think what I'm doing is easy, why don't you be the gang leader for one day? These are the drugs. Give it to the runners. Let them go out there. When they come back with the money, go to Costco. See what the community needs. We need diapers. We need medicine. We need this. We need that. We need 1,001 things. And he said, I did that for one day and it was completely exhausting. Now that's a PhD worth having. Not sitting behind a chair, reading some books and writing essays you don't even understand. Good teachers, what they usually do, and we'll talk about that tonight because that's what the Upanishad is all about, is they look at you and they ask if you have any potential, if you're worth their time and energy and all that, and they work with you. And they know that every human being has buttons inside them, has a past, has their own addictions, their own biases, and they push those buttons so that who you are will come out, so they can destroy it. That's where your freedom lies. And if you can find such a teacher at the age of 20, by the time you're probably 40, you'll be profoundly healthy. You don't start at the age of 50, because by the time you're 50, you have all the stuff behind you, all these experiences, and it's going to be very, very difficult for a teacher to come and erase all of them, because that's what needs to happen. It needs to be erased. And it's painful. Not impossible. Everything is possible. It just gets more difficult. So I forgot your question, forgive me, but, but you're right about the prodigal son. You know, you have a kid who goes out there, makes a mess, comes back with a good amount of wisdom, understanding of how desires work, how life is. You have this other kid who does nothing wrong, but he has a good amount of jealousy and envy and anger inside him. So whether you do things right or you do things wrong, both paths will create their own unique set of issues that you have to overcome. Yeah, the prodigal son is a story told to us by Jesus, and Jesus is not a very good teacher. He's not a good teacher because he's not married, because he's not attached to his dad, his mom, his community. He just leaves at the age of 12, if the stories are right. And I don't think they are, but let's just say they are. You know, if you want to ask your disciples to leave their families, you need to understand what takes place inside them. The sort of grieving, the sort of loss, the sort of abandonment that their families are going to feel. And somehow you need to take care of those things. And as a good teacher, you choose your disciples very, very carefully. But that's for another day. Now, Kalia, are you kidding me? Kyla?
Do you think that you always have to like experience something first in order to gain wisdom and knowledge from it? But I guess for example, if you see your friend or something going through a relationship and it's pretty bad, and you go, well, instead of you going, oh, they're going to get in a relationship, just like hey, you look at that and you're like, I don't want to do, I'm not going to do that. So, you think that you have to go through a breakup or something?
You don't have to. Let me give it to you this way. As you know, I'm not black, but you are. You have a history that I don't have. Okay? Now, do I completely understand what it means to be black? No. But am I immigrant? Yes. Did my society rob me of hope and dreams? Yes. Did I suffer injustice? Yes. Did I migrate? Yes. Did I lose my family, my friends, my country, my language? Yes. Did I feel hopeless? Did I feel isolation, loneliness? Yes. Do I feel, even at this age of 60, that I'm in a strange land with strange people? Yes. Do I miss home? Yes. Do I know where it is? No. If you can be profoundly imaginative, it's what we call empathy. You know, if you can put yourself in my shoes, okay, what does it mean to be in a bad relationship? Well, you don't walk into a relationship to have a horrifying experience. You go in there because you don't want to be alone. You go in there because you want to love. You go in there because you want a companion. You want to share things. You go in there because you have hopes and you dream and you have fantasies. You want the best for yourself. You want to love. Okay? That's what all of us have in common. But what happens when those needs are not met? Whether you're 15 or 515. What happens when someone's needs are not met? Are they going to be angry? Yeah. Are they going to be disappointed? Yes. Are they going to be suffering from some loss of sorts? Yes. Are they going to be in a grieving mode? Absolutely. Are they going to feel lonely? Yes. The trick is the following, though. You can have all those feelings when you are young. Because when you're young, you have a great capacity. Let's say when you're young, your garbage bin, your trash bin on the inside is enormous. You can withstand a good amount of abuse when you're young. When you get a little older, your trash bin for garbage is very, very, very small. If your friend comes to you at the age of 70 and says, oh, I just ran into this guy and he's abusing me, you say, honey, I told you so. Don't talk to me anymore. At your age, I have no doubt you'll sit with your friend down for 10 hours to try to knock some sense into her thick skull. I will never do that. Not even for my kid. But to empathize, you need to be profoundly imaginative. That's the only way. Just in case you want to be a teacher of sorts for kids or high school or college or university, never forget your past. That you had classes with horrible instructors, and you may be one of them. That you had classes with really good instructors. You were one of them. You were classes that were utterly boring. And as long as you can imagine all of those and never lose them, when you walk in the classroom, you'll be about 80% good, 20% awful. And that's really good. Even 60-40 is good. Because human beings experience this thing in the same way, all of them. Disappointment, hope, dreams. Now, does that, anyone else? No one? Yeah.
As far as spending the night in your town, eventually as you mature, you want to stay over. But as you get older, maybe you guys are contact with benefits. You want to leave. You meet up with a friend, you sleep together, and you leave.
Yeah.
Because that's the arrangement.
Okay.
So it's not as though one is immature. You're just not looking for anything else. Right? Just pleasure. Pleasure.
If that culture allows for that, if those narratives do exist, then yes. In many of the cultures, those narratives don't exist. As a man, a 60-year-old man can't walk into a 50-year-old woman's house, sleep, stay over, and then after 5 hours slowly just walk away. It doesn't work. Because communities are the buffet of emotions such as shame or guilt or remorse or repentance. If, for example, in this culture, at a certain age, you can just have friends with benefit, with no obligation, well, there is no shame with it. When there is no shame, there is no need to repent, no guilt. If, on the other hand, you come from a very, let's just say, traditional set of ideas, well, those things don't take place. And you have to do it when your parents are asleep or friends are asleep or no one knows, and it's a bit more complicated.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
So the Kama, what is Kama Sutra?
Sutra comes from the word suture, which means like you sew things together. The easiest way I can describe this, and forgive me, it's going to be very cheesy. This is Bob, and this is Betsy. Bob has a body, and so does Betsy. Betsy has a set of emotions, and so does Bob. And you can call it the soul if you want, doesn't really matter. Okay. Betsy has a mind, and so does Bob. Okay. What usually happens is the two bodies usually come together, but the emotions are missing, and the minds are completely like in different ways. It's kind of like you're sitting here, physically you're here, but mentally you're saying, I'm so hungry, I hate this guy, and I hate this class. And then the emotions of frustration and all those things come about, okay? So even though you're physically here, these two branches of who and what you are in completely different places. Now, part of the Kama Sutra phenomenon has to do with what you ought to do with your physical body to gain the most amount of pleasure, okay? But remember, pleasure without the mind and the emotions or the soul, for the Kama Sutra tradition is a kind of bit useless. Because Kama Sutra eventually will become the tantric philosophy of India and eventually Buddhism, and then it goes into China and becomes the golden lotus of Taoism and all that, which we won't talk about. Now, the trick of the Kama Sutra tradition is, it is true that the two bodies will come together. Eventually, the two minds also have to meet and come together. As the two bodies grind and become very intimate, the minds also need to become very intimate. And the emotions also need to become very, very intimate. And then what you have is this. You have Bob and Betsy coming together, body, mind, and soul. So you have a unity here, and you have a unity here, and these two unities come together to create union. And now you have an explosion of what we call the real self coming out or whatever. It's just an experience. But for us Westerners living in America, even if we can do the body version in a proficient way, that should be good for the first lifetime. Any other questions before? All right. Now that I know everything I touch will eventually turn to dust, I gotta figure out if there is anything in life worth doing that will not ultimately become one of disappointment and betrayal. I have difficulty these days coming to class because I'm always looking at the end result. And the end result is always disappointing. It's not so much about inspiration, it's about protecting the inspiration, knowing what to do with the inspiration, and they require so much work. Add to it the fact that they say, okay, so I go to class. What the hell am I going to talk about for the next 2-3 hours? And even when I say what I say, what do they really mean? Do I myself know even what I'm talking about? And even if I do know, can I convey or express them in a way that does my emotions or understanding justice? And even if I am able to express them the right way, am I being heard the right way? And even if you guys can understand this stuff the right way, can you really apply it? And the answer to all of that is a no. So why do anything? If you take this very, very seriously, there is nothing worth doing in life. Nothing. Because every piece of inspiration will eventually die. Every single one of them. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter what you do. You will eventually grow tired of the things that once brought passion. I remember some years ago when Robert Redford played in this movie called The Horse Whisperer. Beautiful movie. For those of you who haven't seen it, it's a 3-hour movie. It's really good. I watched it in Roseville. I went there at 10 o'clock. I was so moved by the movie, I said, I'm going to sit and watch another episode of the movie. But after about 4 hours of sitting in the dark and watching these images in front of me, my eyes grew really, really tired. They began to burn. Then I began to feel nauseous. Then I just went all the way to the back of the theater and just slept. The movie inspired me, but eventually I got tired. I got worn out. What do you do with this knowledge when everything in the end just disappoints you? I got kids. They're going to turn out like me. Well, that's no great feat, really. And my kids, what are they going to do? Well, they're going to be victim of some pleasure. They're going to pursue them. They will reach some. They'll eventually become bored. They won't reach some. They'll be frustrated. And somehow they'll either forget or have to go to a therapy and fix it. But that's it. There is really no magic in life. And even if there is, you eventually come to realize how the magic are created. And you realize for the early Indians, life is not a happy event. It's all a struggle to keep yourself imaginative and intellectually afloat. To keep going despite knowing at the end of every journey, once you're satisfied, you will no longer be interested. Some of you in this class were once dating, in a relationship, now you're single, and now you long to find yourself a companion. Maybe you're still healing and you're going to wait another couple years, then you're going to be on this quest to find someone. So let me tell you how it's going to go. You're going to go to a coffee shop with a book in your hand. You're going to sit somewhere, you're going to read, and you're going to look at the end of the room and there's a guy or a gal. Say, oh my God, she's so cute. Okay. And then now that you've lost a little focus, you begin to entertain this other thought. Maybe I should go to him or her and say hello. Can I buy you a cup of coffee? Maybe I should just walk towards them, accidentally trip, and spill my coffee all over them. And I'll tell them how sorry I am. And then tell them, I live close by and have a washer dryer. They can come over, remove their clothes, and I'll wash it for them for free. Yep. And then, of course, I'll make them dinner. And then after 2-3 weeks, they'll stay over. We'll be intimate. It'll be very fun. We'll have sex everywhere. You know, bathroom, shower, bedroom, kitchen, outside in the park. And then after a while, I'll get tired. We'll have conversations. And then a few weeks later, I say, well, maybe this wasn't a good idea after all. Then you want to be alone again. With some awareness and imagination, you can realize how everything in your life is going to unfold. And for the ancient Indians, they realized that life is a very, very tragic experience. But there is a way out. Death. Once you die, that is your freedom, not Jesus Christ. Once you die, there is nothing to desire anymore. And if there is no desire, there is no pursuit. There are no emotions. But a tragedy took place in the Indian tradition. Someone came forth and said, listen, you mow the lawn, you kill the grass, and grass grows. You chop off a tree, and from the base of the trunk, another branch grows. It seems as if life has a tendency of recycling itself. You can't kill anything. Everything comes back. Nothing is trashed by life. And for the first time, you have a concept in the Hindu tradition that did not exist, and it's called reincarnation. And you can look at this, I suppose, metaphorically, and that's the following. Let's say when you were 12 or 15 or 16, you had an awful relationship. that created a good amount of trauma inside you. And it just lived inside you. And in as much as you want to throw it in the garbage or trash, it just refuses to go away. It's a living organism, as Darwin would say. And it'll do whatever it possibly can to survive. And one of the ways it does is by allowing you or forcing you to think about it over and over and over and over again. And the more you think about the trauma, the more space it occupies within you. And so you do the best you can to recover from the trauma, and then now you're like 25 or 26 or 30, and you imagine that you have recovered somewhat fully, and you get yourself into a brand new relationship. And the first couple of weeks are really, really good, but then the trauma begins to show its face, little by little. It comes to the surface and shows itself, and destroys the relationship once again, all because it was unresolved. And that's what reincarnation is. The other aspect of reincarnation is that it comes with what we call karma. And karma is the following. We can't but make a lot of mistakes in life. Every mistake that you and I make tips the scale. It creates injustice, imbalance. And life has only really one function: to balance the scale, to make sure that justice prevails. Which means the following. Whatever you and I do that contains a good amount of contamination, it will come back to haunt us. And now, if you and I were Hindus, we'd be confronted with the following. If from the moment you are born to the time you die, you have no choice but to pursue this or that pleasure, how can we truly know what pleasure is good for us? Because if I make a wrong choice and pursue a pleasure that seems to be okay, but later on shows to be unhealthy, it means that I've created these waves or negative forces that has created imbalance or injustice, and somehow, at some space or some stage, I have to pay for it. I am married with children. Relationships after a while are all about politics. They are difficult to maintain. They need oil change every single day, 50 times a day. And as a human being, all of us in this class, we want inspiration, we want excitement. Children, they suck the life out of life. You look at your companion, you want to strangle them. You don't know what to do with them. That is just life. So I walk to Pete's. All of a sudden, I see an attractive young thing. I walk to them. I say hello to them. And I go to their house. And we have a fling. Maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, maybe 5. I go home, my wife says, "Where have you been?" I was at the church, I say. Eventually, she gets to know the truth. Did I have fun having sex? Absolutely. Did she catch me? Yes. Does it come with a good set of feelings? No. What happens to the kids? They're going to hate me for a long, long, long time. Are they going to come and visit me in the nursing home? Probably not. and loneliness, isolation, sadness, which are my companion now. These are how life finds balance in itself. Remember, if you're a practitioner of this tradition, you have to be careful every step that you make in life, because it comes with consequences. Now, there are a few ways that you and I move into action. First is physically. You make me angry enough, I walk over there and I slap you. That's one way of action. Another is you raise your hand to ask a question and I jump all over you in a very mean-spirited way. Action through language. But my language is rooted in the way I think about things. Sometimes I look at you and I just don't like the way you look. And I don't like the way you feel. And I whisper all these nasty things about you, but just to me. So I can create injustice physically, intellectually, and intentionally. Be very silent about them. Do you have any questions, any comments before we? Yeah.
You talked about balancing skills. Is it possible to, when it comes to karma, not to personally experience the consequences of something you did, but if someone, like your family, like you said, your wife or your children, they kind of, you watch them experience the karma of what you've done. Because so that your wife stays, like, that's not real, her leaving your karma, but you get to stay. So you kind of are gonna have to it's what she and the kids go through. Like, is that?
So let me see if I understand you. Let's just say you and I are married, and let's say I transgress. Eventually you and I work it out, but the kids find out, and all of a sudden the relationship that the kids have with you are now different because they say leave him, you say no, they don't even talk to me. And so from that point on, the kids don't have trust in either me or you. The kids don't trust any relationship they walk into, and they will suffer for the rest of their life. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a remedy for that, did you?
That's what I'm saying, like, so karma and not impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. One of the nice things about, 50, 60 years ago is that despite relationships being somewhat toxic, not all the time, in a visual way, but couples stayed together for the sake of the kids, especially during the formative years, 0 to about 10, 11, But these days, by the way, for those of you in this class who are interested in relationships and how they function and how dangerous they are these days, there's a guy, you may enjoy some of the things that he says. Is he a therapist or a lawyer or something? But he's really good and he's very animated. His name is John, I think, Sexton. It may be John, it may be Jack, it may be Bob. But he's a nice looking man. Maybe that's why. He's got nice hair, nice tattoos. He speaks well. Anyways. Anyone else? Yeah.
This goes back to the teacher question, so it's not appropriate.
No, it is. Go ahead.
See about this in the essay, and then also just give them issues earlier. But thinking about how now it's a lot more common to have multiple teachers instead of just one teacher, which would be like
No, you just need to have one. Just one.
just one. Well, I guess I'm wondering about like the benefits or drawbacks of. See, it seems like one is best.
See, the thing is, having multiple teachers is good, but you have to be a very advanced student. If you look at children, the first few months of their life, all you give them is milk. Once their digestive system matures a little, now you give them mashed potatoes and carrots and broccoli and some god-awful thing, right? And then you can like cut meat, tiny pieces, and just push it in their throat. And then there comes a point where they actually have teeth. Now you can give them rocks to eat, all sorts of things. Okay. And I think students are very much like that. You need to work with one software because that's what teachers are. There is a program inside them, there's a software inside them, and there is a certain way they do things. That's what they specialize in. Okay? Let's say that you find a teacher from the Buddhist tradition. Okay? Now, you also like this other teacher, he's a Christian. See, the problem now is this. If you want to truly follow the teachings of Christ, you need to believe in sin. And that's what that teacher specializes in. They need to convince you that your existence is flawed. Okay? And you need sin. You need repentance. You need acceptance of Jesus Christ and his teachings. The Buddhists don't believe in sin. You're not flawed. You just need to be aware of things. Now, if you happen to be very creative, you can kind of mesh them together. But the idea of working with the Buddhist teacher on Monday and then working with the Christian teacher on Tuesday, it's not going to work. Why? Because the Buddhists, whenever you say, I'm a sinner, he said, what the hell are you talking about? What's wrong with you? There is no sin inside you. Wake up. Think. Reflect. So what you do is for the first few years, and usually you need to understand that you're like a house when you find a teacher. And the teacher is like a bulldozer. They have to destroy your entire house. And the only thing that will remain is the slab. If the slab is cracked, and that slab has to go to your past from, again, 0 to about 6, your foundation, okay? Because teachers build a house, and that house needs to be built on a slab. Now, sometimes the slab is bad. That slab, the way it's made, it's culture, it's tradition, it's the narratives that exist in your culture. So, let's just say that, this is hypothetical. Let's say you want to work with me. Well, I come from a religious background. You don't. That slab isn't there for you. My language is also religious. Yours isn't. Okay? My culture is mostly based on the emotions. Yours isn't. We are very family oriented. Yours isn't. So before we can even build anything, before we can kind of anchor the 2x4s, I have to get rid of the slab that lives inside you. Now that means what? That means I have to spend the first 5 years of my life inviting you to my house over and over and over again. So your trust, your faith, and your love in other people can come about. Because you don't have that. Once, and remember, you're going to abuse me, my wife, and my kids. You're going to say, I'll come tonight, but you won't show up. And when you do, you'll be in a bad mood. Or you have this set of conflicting emotions. Why am I doing this? This guy is from the Middle East, and Middle Eastern people are a little weird. Okay? And so, once the slab is there and has been formed and shaped and all that, then little by little I can now give you cultural narratives. I can give you like the teachings that will make you a bit more self-aware. But you have to be, initially, you have to be 0 American and 100% Persian.
To have like a complete slab.
Yeah.
You guys.
Right. And then once the slab and some of the 2x4s are there, then you can go back and being American. Now, what you'll do with your Americanism now, it'll be seasoned with Persian philosophy, with Persian poetry, with Persian sense of community. Again, it's no different than the book Gang Leader for a Day. Have you ever seen that movie Pretty Woman? So what happens is there is Richard Gere and Julia Roberts, right? And her business is in the street. She's a prostitute. I don't think it's an easy life. Let's just say you come from a relatively good background, you got crummy friends, like Pinocchio, they lead you astray on the wrong path. And, you want to make some money, you want some power in your life, you want to buy a house, you want men to like you. Anyways, you go to the streets with a nice little skirt. And the first time you do it, it's going to be a little difficult. You probably after the physical engagement, you're going to walk to the church, cry, slap yourself, hit yourself, and you're going to say, never again am I going to do this. But after a while, you say, man, I made like $500 in 20 minutes. Okay? So the temptation sets in. And little by little, regret goes away, shame goes away. And that's the sort of animals that we are. The sort of things that initially bothered you, to a great degree, they disappear. Okay? You adjust, you become resilient. Shame comes, but leaves very quickly because it knows that it can't really stay with you for too long. You're just a bad companion for sure. And then Richard Gere comes about. He says, hey you, how about we go and do something? Okay. So they go to his hotel, in his room, and she wants to take off his pants. And he says, whoa, no, let's have a drink first, let's talk. And that's not what you do. I mean, one of the main principles of prostitution is that you don't have an emotional relationship with your customers. You give them pleasure, okay? But no emotional intimacy. And after a while, they have a conversation, which is unusual for her. She likes it. She feels as if, she's being seen as a human being, not as a thing to be had and tossed. And then she's about to leave and he says, why not stay the night? Stay. That's going to cost you some money. Money is not a problem. Stay the night. She stays, I'm guessing. The movie doesn't actually show that, maybe it does. In the morning, she's about to leave and he says to her, what's the rush? What are you doing today? Can I buy another day? You want to have sex the rest of the day? No. We'll just go out and have fun. Another unusual thing. They have shake on the balcony, they have a great time. And then she's about to go home and he says to her, there is this party, you want to come with me? Again, another shock to her system. You see, when you're a one-night stander, you have a certain image of yourself. You have a certain image of how relationships should be. You have a certain way of thinking about sex. Richard Gere is kind of just throwing her all over the place. She's confused. She doesn't know exactly what's happening. And then comes this shocking stage where one morning she just looks at Richard Gere and she feels as if she's falling in love with him. Very unusual. The last time she fell in love was when she was 2, and that was with her father. The rest, she uses men, as men use her. Love, this romantic kind of love, unknown to her. Eventually things happen. She gets really angry with him. He gets angry with himself he has fallen in love with her, but he can't get rid of the idea that she's a prostitute. So now he's in conflict. She's a prostitute, but that was the past. She's different now. She's been baptized by love. So she gets on a cab and she goes home to her friend's house. He feels miserable. He misses her. He doesn't want to be with her, but he misses her. Eventually, the yin and the yang, the dark and the light, She's a woman, she's a prostitute, she's a woman, I love her, I hate her. He finds a space inside himself that accepts her because he has come to realize now she's no longer a prostitute. She's fully devoted and committed to him as he is to her. So the movie ends with, I guess, him with a bouquet of flowers.
He grabs up the window, right?
Yeah, that's right. And grabs her with the throat and pushes it down. Right. And they get married, and they have 25 kids. And that is the transformation that needs to happen. And it is, it is true that the movie is only an hour and a half, but it really takes a lifetime. It really does.
There was a teacher.
Well, I don't know who the teacher is in the movie, but what you have is a woman, I suppose, who's in the sort of a business that does not involve love or intimacy. And somehow she has to accept the fact that she is falling in love and she loves intimacy. The problem with love and intimacy is that it's monogamous. And she can't go back to her profession. Once you fall in love with something that's profoundly mature, it's very difficult to go back being with immature. It doesn't work. It doesn't mean that you won't step into it. You will, but you will hate yourself afterwards. All right. It's 8, right? Okay, let's do another 2 hours and then go home. Do you have any other questions before we... No more? You sure? Okay. There are about 400 million gods in Hindu tradition. If you are a Jew, a Christian, or a Muslim, tough luck. You're in a really, really bad situation. If you're a Christian, Jesus is the only way. If you're a Jew, there is El Shaddai, Elohim, and Yahweh, so you have more options. If you're Muslim, you're also a little screwed, because there is only Allah. If you're a Hindu, you don't like Jesus, go to the Buddha. You don't like Buddha, go to Muhammad. You don't like Muhammad, worship yourself. Doesn't really matter. You have all these different options. It's like Costco. You don't like aisle 5, go to aisle 10. Now, they did something really amazing. They cut the human body and they yanked it open. And they injected all these tiny little gods inside the human body. If you want money, there is a God for that. You pray to it. If you want health, there's a God to worship. Custom made. Whatever it is you need in life, there is a God that will speak to it. Okay? Now, since the Hindus have come to realize that physical life is so difficult, emotional life is so difficult, intellectual life is difficult, human beings need help, especially since they're not going to die forever, they're going to come back to life. We need a lot of help. And out of this comes the Vedic tradition. V-E-D-A, the Vedas. You can add an S to the end. The word Veda means secret. Some of you in this class have diaries. Why? Why do you keep your stories a secret? You have a diary and you hide it under your mattress. Why? You don't want anyone to read them. Why? Should your mom find your diary and read it, she's going to interpret your writing in the wrong way. You don't want to be harassed by your mom. You don't want to answer her questions. Your mom is the wrong person to find the diary. Maybe your brother, you trust him a bit more. You're more intimate with him. There are 4 very, very important Vedas. No one knows who wrote them. The first is called Yajur Veda. You don't need to write this stuff down. It's nonsense, really. But let me just tell you what exactly they mean. If you want to make any changes to your life, you need to understand Yajur Veda because it means Vedas or secrets of sacrifice. If you want to be in a committed relationship that's for the most part trouble-free, make sure you have a job that's secure. Make sure once in a while you walk to the cemetery, steal some flowers and take them to your wife. Make sure once in a while you go out and eat. Make sure the tone of your voice is soft and gentle, even when you know she's wrong. Sacrifice. You want to get an A in this class, come to class every single day, despite the fact that you don't like me or the ideas of this class. The problem with sacrifice is the following. To some extent, you need to know what has caused you pain. You need to feel discomfort with the thing that has caused you pain. Then you need to become aware of the pain and how it impacted you on a physical level, on an emotional level, and on a mental level. Let me give you an example. Let's say you enjoy physical intimacy. And you also know that you're of the temperament that the moment you have sex with someone after a couple times, you begin to like them. You begin to emotionally become involved with them. But the problem is you always go out with the wrong person. You get close, you're emotionally entangled, and they look at you after 2 weeks and they say, I don't want to be with you. And now you feel hurt. Now you feel depressed. Now you feel lonely. At a certain stage, you say to yourself, you know what? I am tired of going out with losers and eventually being harassed by them. And then be pushed into this dark dungeon where I'm all by myself and I cry day and night. So you know what I want to do, you say to yourself, I'm going to self-heal for a little bit. I'm going to not date anyone for about 2 years. That's your first promise. Which means that next time you have the urge of intimacy, you need to remember your promise. And you need to slay the temptation, the desire. And next time you see someone at Pete's Coffee who's a little attractive and you want to step forward and say hi and then sleep with them or have a conversation with them, feel relevant, significant, important, you say, no, I've been there, I've done that. Now, the truth is you can't just backstep, you can't just walk away. Because your habit, your addiction has been you always go, say hello, you take him home, and you have a good time. But you have to remember the consequences of what has been happening to you for the past 20 years, and then you say no. But the no comes with a good amount of dark and light conflict. yes, no, yes, no. You have this internal battle. In the Islamic tradition, we call it Jihadul Akbar. Fighting him is easy. Fighting myself not to dislike him is difficult. Okay? And being alone for 2 years is tough. Not having sex is tough. Not feeling relevant, important, significant is tough. And yet, because you made a promise, there are sacrifices you need to make to keep the promise true. Let me tell you a story. It's a true story. There was this woman in the 80s or so, 90s maybe. She was about 32. She was a lawyer, had a great job, made lots of money. But she went out with these men, and she always felt disappointed by them. And she was at a place in life where she wanted a family. She wanted to have kids. She wanted like intimacy and all that. So she says, I'm not going to date for 2 years. And after that, I'm only going to go out with someone who has the following qualities. And she listed like 50, 60 qualities that a man needs to have in order for her to take this man seriously. And she passes her notes to her friends and says to them, if any of you find a man with these qualities, or most of these qualities, let me know. After about 3 years or so, one of her friends calls her and says, hey, there's a guy that fits the bar perhaps. Maybe you should try him out. They go out and they talk. Now, one of the things about once you realize what it is that you want, you're not going to waste too much time. You say hello, you say how are you doing, how are your parents, and then you go for the jugular. You ask all the right questions. If at the age of 18, someone coming from a good background didn't mean anything to you, at the age of 35, it means everything to you. How's your mom? How's your dad? Did you go to school? Do you have money? Do you have a job? Do you smoke? Do you drink? Do you watch porn? And all these will give you a clue. And in 10 minutes' time, you'll either stay or you walk away. So this woman and this man go out on a date. Okay. Now, she doesn't know this. Unbeknownst to her, he also has a list. And as they're sitting having conversation, they check the boxes. 3 months later, they get married. Beautiful relationship. 7 months later, she doesn't feel good. She's taken to the emergency. She's diagnosed with MS, multiple sclerosis. And for those of you who may not know, our neurons, brain cells are protected by myelin sheets. They protect the cells and the messages that I need to walk over there. If the message is delayed, you're going to fall. Okay? So, and after about a year and a half into the relationship, she can't walk, she can't eat, she can't do anything. He has to take care of every aspect of who and what she is. And then she has to take a lot of medication. And for those of you who don't know, people with MS who take a lot of medication, because of the medicine that they have to intake, their body just grows. Okay? Now, he is washing her. She looks at him and says, I am so sorry for having messed up your life. They're both very young. She's like 32, 33. He's the same age. And he looks at her and says, you are the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. You have to be profoundly mature, and you have to know who you are and what you want. To overcome your physical appetites. Your eyes will tell you, look at someone who is physically attractive. But this man has been there, has done that. Where he comes to a place where he says, though on the outside she may not be very attractive, on the inside, she's profoundly gorgeous. Now, if you're immature, you can't do that. So, Yajur Veda, sacrifice. You want to go to school? You can't have as much fun with your friends. You want to raise your kids healthy? Don't give them TV. Don't give them cell phones. Don't hang out with losers. Family or foe, doesn't matter. Now, for you to make any promise that's worth making a promise to, you need care and interest and passion. There is something about yourself you hate. There is also something about yourself you really, really like. And this part of yourself that you like, you say, it's worth making the sacrifice. Okay? So that's Yajur Veda. The next is called Soma Veda. Soma is about human expression through language, through words. There is a goddess that lives here in the throat. Her name is Vak, V-A-C. And it's a goddess that comes about during moments of inspiration. Usually we talk about passions of the human body, or passions of the emotions, or passions of the intellect. Once in a while we use language, it comes out of us in a certain way that it even amazes and bewilders us. It's kind of like when you're inspired and you sit behind the piano and you play, or you grab your pencil and you write a couple of lines of poetry, and then you put it away, and then you go back to it the following day and you say, really? Did I write this? And the answer is yes. This writing was done not by you, but through you. Since the Vedas have all these different deities, you need to have the right set of emotions to call on the gods, and you need to speak to them in the right way. In other words, if I come to class tomorrow and I say, I just got some news, I have stage 4 cancer, okay? Something happens to you when I give you that information. Your voice softens a little. You ask questions in a much more respectful way, much caring way. There's a good amount of sympathy and empathy that just exists in your voice and your body language. These things just happen to us. We don't create them. They happen to us. Soma Veda happens to us. You don't need to practice it. It's like the Holy Ghost, as a Christian would say. All of a sudden, it comes upon you, and you become something that you're usually not. So if you go back to our conversation about Gilgamesh, Enkidu, and prayer, remember what we said. Sometimes you say things just to say things. It's gossip. It's good. You need to be a good gossiper. Otherwise, life will not move forward. The idea that you should only talk about meaningful things are for very, very advanced people who live in profoundly meaningful communities where they can sit and talk politics and religion and philosophy 24/7. For us puny people, we are lightweight. So we need losers in our life so we can gossip, chit-chat about ridiculous things. Okay? So sometimes we speak, but it's just gossip, just air. Sometimes we speak because we are curious, because we think, we reflect, and it has a bit more of a depth. It's more meaningful. Sometimes we think, but we also feel. And all of a sudden you realize your language, though you use words, those words have not only elements of reflection, but also components of emotions and feelings. Okay. And then there is Rig Veda. Rig Veda is a book with a name of a lot of gods. It really is like going to Costco. You can't go to 7-Eleven. Most of the things that 7-Eleven has are probably expired. But when you go to Costco, it's a huge place. You have all these aisles. Whatever your issues may be down here in the Kama, Artha, and Dharma world, these books can probably take care of them. Okay? Now remember, the Vedic tradition, for the most part, only satisfies our difficulties in the world of pleasure of the body or pleasure of power or emotions. Okay? Hinduism is not yet at a stage where they tell you the kingdom of God is inside you. It doesn't exist just yet. What time is it?
8:17.
10 minutes. All right, let's have a couple of questions and then we can tackle the Upanishads tomorrow. Anyone?
A few lectures ago, you talked about nuance being for very advanced people. Trying to take back some of questions.
Who are they?
It seems endlessly gray. How do we get around that by only looking at everything in a black and white context? Or do you want
When you graduate from high school and enter college, and the way usually this culture works is that you spend the first 2 years of your life not knowing exactly what you want to do. And sometimes you get so confusing that you look at your parents and you say, it's no good. I just want to like travel and then go back to school when I'm a bit more clear as to what it is I want to do. So sometimes confusion just leads to just dropping out. Other times, you just keep taking classes, class after class, semester after semester, because you don't really know, and there's no one out there who can inspire you, you know. And so it's not black and white, it's all gray. Let's say you walk into a history class being taught by Roy Casagranda, who teaches in Texas Community College. Beautiful guy. Or you take a class from Michael Segru, who's now retired. Or Robert Solomon, who's dead. But nevertheless, you take their class and all of a sudden say, oh my God, this guy's amazing. And you just took a history class because you need to fulfill a requirement. You know, you want to like major in business. But the guy is so inspiring. And you go home and just this lecture just keeps running in your head. And then you go to Amazon and you buy some books on history, for example. And then you go to your mom or your dad and you say, you know, I know I only have a couple more semesters to finish my business degree, but history, man, it's amazing. And as Roy Casagranda begins to occupy more space inside you, your desire for business, your desire for money, your desire for security go away. and you say, I want to teach the way he does. I want to major in history. And all of a sudden, the world is no longer gray. It's just black and white. Anything that's not Roy Casagrande, anything that's not history, anything that's not connected to history, such as philosophy, political science, sociology, you're not interested. You're interested in economics, as long as it can somehow relate itself to history and how it plays with people. And all of a sudden, things are no longer gray. It's black and white. Anything non-history, you're not interested. But then something interesting happens to you. Years pass by, you're a proficient historian and a history instructor. But now you realize that, well, what is really history? History is a set of stories from different cultures. How are stories created? Events happen. Some events internal, some events external, imposed on internal. And then, what are narratives? Some narratives are psychological, some narratives are political, some narratives are philosophical, some narratives are mythological. And all of a sudden you say, oh my God, in history there is all this gray stuff. And what's the gray stuff? Everything that you call life is history. Now you're gray, but in a very mature and proficient way. You connect every gray element to the black and white of history. Now you are what we call a very diverse thinker. Not the diversity we usually talk about, which is nothing but diarrhea. I'll give you another example, and then we'll go to the next question, if there is any. A few years ago, I called this Persian woman. I said, you know, I have a piano. I want my daughter to learn piano, learn how to play the piano. Can you teach her? I've heard many good things, about you. And she asked, the first question that she asked, Mr. Sabzor, it's good to know you and hear from you and all that stuff. Tell me, how old is your daughter? She's not really born yet, but the moment she comes out, I want her to learn. Says, I'm 60. I don't have the patience for novice students. I want someone who is advanced. When you're a 20-year-old piano teacher, like what we talked about earlier, you have a great amount of capacity for just trashy people coming into your life and teaching them this and that. When you get a little older, when you respect your capacity a bit more, when you respect your art, your craft a bit more, your time, your energy, you say, you know what, I don't want to work with 10-year-olds. I don't want to work with 20-year-olds unless they're like a genius, profoundly talented. They become very black and white. I think anytime you become good at anything, it doesn't matter what it is, you can't but be black and white, but you will know what to do with gray. When you're no good at anything, you welcome all sorts of trash in your life. You don't end up anywhere. Anyone else? Oh yeah, sorry. Probably not. So, I usually do the caste system in a different way. There are plumbers. They like plumbing. They like PCV pipes. They like to glue them together. They like to do lawns. They like to cut trees. They're very tactile. And they really enjoy their connection to the earth. And they're happy with it, they're content. That's their salvation, that's their paradise. I had a Ukrainian friend, he was a family friend for 30 years or so. He built his first house at the age of 18 in Russia. He just loved working with his hands. And he had 14 kids. And when you sit with the people of the body, you can't really engage with them about philosophy and religion, those things. They're not really that interested. They may entertain them, but their salvation really is just working with their hands. That's one class. Then there are people of the intellect. They're like the Karl Marx and the Durkheims and the Malcolm X's and those people who like to sit and think thoughts. And because the plumbers suffer a good amount of injustice and poverty, you need the intellectuals like Malcolm X to inspire the plumbers. The plumbers will forever remain plumbers, but instead of getting $5 an hour, because of Malcolm X, the intellectual, now they'll get $25 an hour. So the only reason why a plumber would want to hang out with an intellectual is because somehow the intellectual will make the life of the plumber a bit more comfortable and easier. Then there are those who are political. They talk about the injustice, they talk about justice, they talk about laws and regulations and other things. And those people just hang out together. And they're good for both the intellectuals as well as those who are tactile. And then there are those who, for some strange reason, they have this yearning or hunger inside them. They're the religious or the spiritual type. That's how the caste system is. But if that doesn't please you, caste system is ultimately about power. Instead of talking about India, let me just put this on the board and we'll go home afterwards. The Middle East has had caste system. The Romans have had caste systems. The Greeks have it. And the West has had it. India has it. All that stuff. Now, for the Western world, this is how the Western caste system worked for not very many years, but it lived enough to create a good amount of pollution and contamination and poison just within the psyches of people. At the very top, and this is the outcome of Charles Darwin a little bit, eugenics and this is called the Caucasoid. And it's primarily white. This particular caste believed that they are the salvation to the world. They are the only people who can create the city on the hill. They are pure, and they have the best philosophy of life that will eventually lead humanity towards happiness. And they had a good amount of power, which was imposed on what we call Mongoloids. That's people who look like me. That we are incomplete. Okay? Middle Easterners, Asians. The task of the Caucasoid caste is to baptize the Mongoloids. Go in their land, destroy their philosophy of life, and replace that philosophy with their own philosophy, namely Christianity. So there are certain parts of Africa, for example, that during Easter, they hang these tiny white statues of Jesus Christ, and the task of the community is to celebrate. And then at the end of the celebration, with a stick, break all these white statues and replace them with black ones. Okay. Below the Mongoloids are what they call the Negroids. Okay. I mean, it's a very elaborate and complicated philosophy. So if these are the civilized, these are the barbarians, and these are the savages. And the task of this particular caste is to baptize this, purify them. And the only way you can do it is get rid of their culture, replace them with their own. Get rid of their culture, replace them with your own. Okay. The Negroid will never get married to the Mongoloid. The Mongoloid will never get married to the Caucasoid, because you don't want the lesser blood to contaminate the better blood. That's what a caste system is. So when you look at India, for example, even to this day, if you're from the working class, you can't marry someone who's above you. At least it used to be that way.
It's structured.
And you know, in some ways, and it may be politically incorrect to say, the truth is, if you have a philosophy of life that revolves around, and that's your caste, philosophy of karma, and that's where your friends are, that's where you are, that's where your parents are. The truth is, if my daughter, for example, falls in love with your son, who's all about karma, as a parent who perhaps may live in Artha, maybe I just value education and you don't. You live in a different caste, you live in a different world, you have a different philosophy. I don't know what's going to happen to my daughter. I don't care if my daughter loves your son. I will do whatever I can to destroy the relationship. I mean, that's what a caste system is. And the truth is, if you look at the friends you have, if you look at the movies you watch, you hang out with a certain group of people. And when another person comes in with a different philosophy of life, you look at your friends and you say, I don't think they belong with us. And that's what a caste system is. And all of us have it, in some shape or form. A caste system is nothing but a certain philosophy of life. Some people are welcome to it, some people are not. Anyone else? Well, it's good to see all of you. Tomorrow we'll talk about Upanishads, we'll talk about teachers and students, and then we'll go home. Thank you. Did you have a question? Yeah, go ahead. No, for those of you who want to leave, go ahead.
I was thinking about the caste system and well, I might just say that we have different forms of caste system because it makes me think of the West and like how the foundation of the caste system we had out here was like not really but more on like racism and just being prejudice. But compared to you speaking about India and their caste system, I feel like it's a little different to the West. I kind of like how you explain that because I kind of learned a little bit about that. But I learned how that was structured more into like racism and certain prejudice, like goals for different races, and how you don't want to mix with certain races because certain groups of people were seen as, like you said, barbarian or savage.
And also the idea of contamination.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. So it's just, yeah. I guess I was trying to get the next for that and how there was some caste systems. And I definitely heard about within the Indian culture, there's caste systems. I heard a lot about that. But yeah.
Yeah, the idea of certain groups of people just sticking to themselves, it's been around for a long, long time. Again, it's most of these new ideas about getting rid of racism, getting rid of injustice, they're really relatively new. You know, mixing people together. It's only been maybe 150 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah.